Hey guys, it's ex-mormon with My Spiritual Life, and today we are talking about confronting the fear of failure. This month I'm focusing on creating content around building your self-trust and confidence after something traumatic like leaving a religion or family trauma. And I think one of the most biggest hurdles to trusting yourself is that fear of failure, and what we make that mean and how it plays out in our life can be so incredibly crippling. I think if you want to learn to trust yourself, if you want to learn to feel confident in yourself, if you want to learn to take more action in your life, you have to work through your fear of failure. And I think most people are very naive to how much it's actually influencing their daily decisions. I don't like the word naive. I'll say unaware. You guys aren't naive. Okay, so here's what I'll call some common symptoms of the fear of failure. So if you notice these things playing out in your life, you're probably struggling with the fear of failure on some level. 1, an inability to make decisions. This can play out in your life like you're pushing decisions off, like you're really worried about making the wrong one. If you feel like decision making is very agonizing, probably dealing with some fear of failure. And I'll tell you what, no one has made decision making more agonizing in the past than I have. Quick tiny example is when I was in college, I was trying to decide between taking archery and swimming, like as an elective. And I was like trying to get Jared to make the decision for me because I was afraid I was going to make the wrong decision on an elective course. Oh God. Okay, procrastination. Again, if you're putting off doing something, you're probably afraid of doing it wrong. Not always, but I know that's a huge reoccurring theme for me. I don't think anything keeps us more stuck and out of action than being afraid to fail. Perfectionism. Huge symptom of fear of failure. Because, and it's so hard because when you are dealing with those perfectionist tendencies, then not only will you procrastinate, but you would rather not do something than do it halfway or do it poorly. And sometimes it's better for things to be done poorly than not done at all, but that's so hard to swallow in a perfectionist brain. And I think perfectionism is a pretty obvious symptom that we're afraid of failing or doing something wrong. I like to consider myself a recovering perfectionist. Yes, let's just call it that. So why does this matter? I think it's incredibly vital for us in our lives to be able to be confident, to be who we are, to make decisions for us and our families. And we can't do that effectively when we are running on so much fear of failure. We cannot be confident in our lives when we are crippled by the fear of failure, like I feel like I have been in my life in the past. So let's talk about where this comes from. In my life, there were 2 main aspects that this showed up as. And one was relevant to my self-worth, and another was relevant to my self-image. So fear of failure can stem from so many different things, right? It can be religious trauma related, it can be family trauma related, like it can come from a lot of different things. But I want to explain to you guys how it showed up in my life because it seems like this is a reoccurring theme that I've noticed in other people as well. First, I'm going to talk about the self-worth aspect. I think somewhere along the way of my upbringing, I connected this idea of my self-worth, my inherent self-worth, to failure. Like I made failure mean that my self-worth is And with those 2 things interconnected, it created this traumatic, crippling event of anything I try, I'm afraid of failing because I'm afraid it's going to mean that I suck and that I'm awful and that I'm terrible. And so obviously it became very, very difficult to step out of my box in any way whatsoever because these things were so tied together in my mind. Moral of the story is when your failure and your self-worth are so interconnected like that in your head, then you're f***ed. Because you're not going to try, because you're going to be way too afraid of failing and what that's going to mean to you. And if you already have a damaged self-worth, why would you put yourself in a position to damage it more? You wouldn't want to do that. It's uncomfortable. As a perfectionist, or recovering perfectionist like I am, this is why we hate goal setting so much, in my opinion, because it's just another thing that you're gonna fail at that's gonna make you feel like shit. I want to put in context like how severely bad this was for me growing up. Because when I went to college, you'd take a test, right? And you would submit the test to the professor and they would grade it and then they would give it back to you. And I was so afraid of failure that, first of all, I would spend countless hours studying because I was just traumatized of failing. And then when the professor would give me the test back, I would just immediately shove it into my backpack and never look at it again. Unless I needed to look at it for like a future test. I couldn't handle the criticism. I could not handle the criticism because it made me feel so bad about myself. And again, so there's the self-worth aspect, and this kind of introduces the other aspect as well, which is that self-image. Like, I didn't want to look stupid. I didn't want to look like a dummy in front of even my professor that like needs to grade the test, like to help me know what I need to work on. Like, it just felt so malicious, and it wasn't. But it was like my brain was making it mean that way. I couldn't take criticism from anyone, even if it was really well intended and kindly given. Like, they have to use a red pen. They just had to use a red pen. So triggering. Anyway, I think these two aspects are just very difficult to combat, and especially when we don't know what to do with them. So I'm going to give you guys some highlights as far as what has helped me, because I have become much more resilient to failure. Let me talk about it. First, I think I had to disconnect in my brain, like, this idea that failure had anything to do with my self-worth. Because once you disconnect that, it's like, oh, failing is just failing, right? Like, it just happens, and because we're freaking human, everyone does it. It's not that big of a deal. Also disconnecting failure from my self-image, as far as like, oh, I can be someone people look up to. I can be someone who's smart. I can be someone who's great. And I can also fail. And those things don't have to be connected. And it's hard. It's hard to do that. But you gotta like work through those emotions in order to get to that place. At one point, I took this business marketing class, and the teacher said something to this effect of, successful marketers have failed more than you have tried. And I remember like just feeling so disheartened by that. Like, oh, here we go. Like, here we go into lots of failure, I guess. That sucks. But in a way, it was also very comforting and kind of promising, because it was like, oh, failure is just a part of the process. Like, it's just one of the steps, pretty much. And trying to focus on that, that aspect, I think really helped me of like, okay, failing is just part of the journey, I guess. So I think what I'm getting at is the more we normalize failure, the more it's just a part of that process, the more we're actually willing to do shit. Because we're not afraid of failing anymore. It's just there. I think high demand religions have this way of really forcing us into this very black and white way of seeing everything. That there has to be a right way to do it. Like there's just, and it's only one. There's one right way, and everything else is just shit. But I think what I'm trying to tell myself is that has helped me is maybe there is no one right way. Maybe there's just a lot of good options, and I'm just trying to pick one and see how it goes. So I'll give you an example. Like when you're trying to buy a house, let's say. I know for me, years ago when we were buying our first house, which, ta-da, hello. When we were buying our first house, I was very stressed about picking like the right house. Like, as if there could be a right house. Like there's a house and you live in it and life moves on. And if you don't like the house, you sell it and you move to another house. And like, I think instead of trying to fixate on this, like, oh no, what if I choose wrong? Like, try to trust yourself that you'll deal with whatever comes of your decision. Like, if this house turns out to be crap, then we're going to fix it. We're going to, pay to fix it, or we're going to burn it down for the insurance money and move away. So maybe there's a lot of good ways to do things, and maybe you just got to pick one way and roll with it. And if you're not so afraid of failing, it makes it much easier to do that. In my life, I'm really trying to minimize the intensity around the fear of failure. Like, again, just trying to not make it a big deal and trying to realize that failure is not something we can avoid, no matter how hard we try. Because I find myself with work stuff, with making these videos, with my coaching business, like always like trying to do it right the first time. And the truth is you don't know how to do it right the first time. You almost never know how to do it right. You just do it. You just try. And I think the power in that just comes from like you actually take action when you're not afraid to fail. And I think forcing myself to take a lot of action that would lead to a lot of failure has somewhat desensitized me to failure a little bit. It's still not something I like to experience, but I'm certainly not holding myself back from it anymore. Like, not holding myself back from taking action because I'm afraid of failing. And if it weren't for me being willing to confront the possibility of failing, I wouldn't have had some of the most amazing successes that I've had in my life in these past couple years. And I've had some amazing success. This channel is a great example of that. Still terrifies the shit out of me sometimes. So, give yourself permission today to fail. To fail miserably, to fail epically, to fail horrendously. And if you can do that, then you can do some amazing shit. Because that fear of failure is not going to stop you if you take it head on. Booyah! Okay, I have prompts for you guys. Click the link below, join my Facebook group, answer these prompts in there or in the comments below. 1, why am I so afraid of failing? List every reason you can think of. The first step to moving past this is you got to figure out where you're coming from. What is going on up here so that you can confront and move forward in your fear of failure. 2, what is the fear of failure holding me back from in my life right now? List everything you can think of. 3, how would I like to view failure instead? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really, really hope this helps you because there is nothing more exhausting than constantly going through your day being afraid of failing. Please hit that subscribe button because my baby is due March 12th and I'm gonna have to take a break. And YouTube doesn't like it when you take a break. So if you guys would hit that subscribe button, it would really help me out so that when I come back to the channel after pushing this baby out, that I still see you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks, huge thanks to our Patreon supporters, and peace out.